when I hear the word redemption, I think of being saved.
God had so much love for us that he wanted to save us and he wanted to help us, and just like giving us a chance at life.
Try to do good after you've done wrong. Realize that you've done something bad and change it.
You either did something wrong or hurt someone, but they forgave you and you've done the right things to redeem yourself.
Think of like a do-over and a second chance.
Coming back from something.
Redeeming yourself, or I don't know.
I think of somebody being sorry for their sins and sorry for what they did and wanting to make up for it.
Did you ever feel the need to be redeemed for something you've done or said?
Yeah, but I think everyone feels that they need to be redeemed.
No, I don't think so. I never had the feeling to be redeemed for something I've done or said.
I have not.
I have.
No, I didn't. I don't ever feel like I had to be redeemed.
Yes, I've been in fights with my friends where I needed to apologize and like redeem myself.
Yeah, there's definitely been some things that I've done in my life that I maybe would like to go back and make up for. So I've definitely felt the need to redeem, and I've went about and done that because I feel like it's the right thing to do.
One person, Jesus Christ.
One act, the incarnation, which means God becoming man.
One heart, which took on the pain and suffering of humanity.
One sacrifice, his death on the cross.
The catechism tells us that the redemption won by Christ consists in this:
that he came to give his life as ransom for many.
Jesus pays the debt for our sins so we can be reunited with God our Father.
And he did all of this, not just for me, not just for Justin,
not just for you or every single person in your neighborhood.
But this gift of redemption is for every single human being that was ever conceived in this whole world.
Redemption. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Justin.
And I'm Carolee.
And this is Real Faith TV.
The teens on the street seem to get the concept of redemption.
We'll hear from them a little later in the show, as well as meet our amazing studio guests.
First, let's meet our spotlight guest, my Uncle Mike.
Carolee's Uncle Mike had a tough time throughout his teenage years.
He hopes that his story will help us to understand the magnitude of Christ's redemption and what it means to our life and our death.
Let's meet him now and find out what redemption means to him.
What do I think of when I hear the word redemption? I think of God breaking into my life, to anyone's life, like breaking into a room to save someone from a fire, or maybe jumping into a swimming pool to save someone who's drowning. I think about God and how God saved not just me, but all of us through his Son, and how in a way all of us were kind of sinking, like on a sinking ship, and God sent Jesus to bring a lifeboat for us and keep us afloat. Deliverance, I think, is something kind of similar. We were delivered from, well, Psalm 116 says we were delivered from the jaws of death. And I think that we don't always realize how close we might be to kind of falling off of the path that God has for us. From time to time, we do actually see that, because God lets us use our freedom the way that we want to use it. And sometimes we abuse that freedom and we use it to ruin our lives. In my life, redemption plays a really important role. When I was growing up, and when I was a teenager, I kind of took faith for granted. When I was in high school, I used to smoke and drink and use drugs and things like that, and I wasn't even able to stop that until I turned to God and asked God for help. And every time I asked God for help, God was there. That, for me, is redemption. I've realized that I don't have the strength to do this alone, but with God's help, I can do anything, even get past my old life.
I myself haven't had like a really big moment where I felt redemption, I guess, because I mean, I've made mistakes, but I've never made mistakes like to the magnitude of which my uncle has at points in his life.
Yeah, neither have I, and I really admire your uncle for turning to God. And like he mentioned about the path, I feel like sometimes I may fall off that path, but when I turn to God, he definitely guides me right back onto the path that I think he has plans for me.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, let's see what our studio guests have to say about the topic.
Okay, they are Joe, Sarah, Maddie, Summer, Allie, Ricky, and Christian.
So what do you guys know about redemption? And what does it mean to you in your life?
When we sin,
we know that God is there and God will come down and help us. He'll get us back on the right track. And that's what redemption means to me.
I think redemption is like if you make a mistake, you're making up for that mistake. You're kind of like redeeming yourself in a sense. And God's always there to help you make up for that mistake that you made.
Redemption for me is like being saved from your sins and the mistakes and knowing that God forgives you.
For me, it's kind of like a second chance. Just being able to know that like you're going to be forgiven no matter what you do. It's also very like calming and soothing to me.
For me, it's like, making something new, renewing something, becoming better.
I like imagine a dry erase board, and like we write upon it every day all the wrongs that we do. And then like when we go to confession and we ask for redemption, God wipes it clean, and like you start over as like a new person.
From Colossians chapter 1.
He delivered us from the power of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son,
in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins.
How do we receive redemption and forgiveness of our sins?
And how difficult is it for you to forgive yourself?
That's what we ask the teens on the street.
I would say you can go about seeking forgiveness or redemption by looking to do the right things.
Going to confession at church can help, or looking for talking to friends, or just being more open with people and asking for forgiveness for things that you've done.
Just praying, I feel.
You can pray.
Especially if you're a Catholic, going into your church, asking for forgiveness, going to the priest.
There's only one way. Yeah, through God.
Going up to the person or going to a priest, asking for help and guide.
It's tough to forgive yourself depending on what you've done.
For me personally, it's pretty easy, but I mean, for other people out there, I mean, I'm sure it's very hard, but like they probably made difficult choices that it's hard to forgive themselves.
I can be very hard on myself sometimes, so I do need to like learn to cut myself some slack and realize that God has forgiven me, so I should forgive myself too, and just like move on with my life and learn from the mistakes that I've made.
It's easy for myself to forgive myself. If I know I did a mistake, I'll forgive myself and make sure I never do it again.
I have a hard time forgiving myself.
I find it very hard to forgive myself.
It's definitely a lot harder for you to forgive yourself than it is to forgive someone else. It's like a battle and like an internal struggle.
It's definitely hard to forgive yourself. I think God forgives you easier than you're going to forgive yourself.
For me, I think that it's not really hard for me to forgive myself because I know that God's always there for me, and if I, like you said before, go off the path, he's right there to put me right back onto it.
I find it very hard to forgive myself, and I think most people do find it hard to forgive themselves. I know a saying, it goes, he who conquers himself conquers 10,000 men, and it really shows the struggle you have to go through, the internal conflict you have to go through to forgive yourself.
I feel like it's a lot harder for me, at least, to forgive myself because to me, I'm my own worst critic. And it's just like for other people to forgive me, I feel like it's a lot easier to accept than for me to forgive myself.
I think it really depends on like what you do. But like then again, like it's always going to be hard to like forgive yourself because like you said, like you're your own worst critic and you know like your own flaws and like what you do wrong like the most. So like I think that's like the hardest thing about it.
It's the same thing with me. It's like, man, did I really do that? I could have done like so much better. Like, really? Like that kind of thing. Like, it's like your own critic, and like you sort of beat up on yourself harder than anybody else beats up on you in a judgment standpoint. You just, for me, it's hard to learn to forgive myself.
For me, it depends on what I did. If it's something small, then I'll forgive myself. But if it's something big to me, I'll be like, I'm never gonna forgive myself. And then it takes like a while, but I soon forgive myself.
I sort of feel like it's like God doesn't make it difficult for us at all to seek redemption, like we have confession, we can call a priest anytime, like going about it is easy. But like I feel once you get there and you're like in the hot seat, so to say, to come up with like to confess things that are so deep within inside you that you did wrong, I feel it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of trust to tell that face to face. It really like puts yourself in a perspective of how easily you can mess up.
We find the famous parable from the prodigal son in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15.
In the following excerpt, Jesus tells us that when the son returned home, he said,
Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you.
I am no longer worthy to be called your son.
But the father said to his servants,
Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him,
and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet.
Carly's Uncle Mike must have felt a little bit like the prodigal son, not worthy of redemption because of all the bad things he had done.
But when he went into treatment for addictions when he was 20 years old, he finally realized the transforming love and power of God.
He just had to get over the fears that were stopping him from getting involved.
Drug addiction took over my life for almost 8 years. I spent almost 3 years in different kinds of institutions. I overdosed on drugs 4 times. When I was 14 years old, I overdosed on drugs and I was put into a mental hospital, and I was there for 7 months. And when I got out, I had a choice that I could either have people at school make fun of me or people at school could be afraid of me. And I chose the coward's way. I chose to have people be afraid of me. I started selling drugs, and one day a friend at school came up to me and said, "I have a gun if you want to buy it from me." And I did. And about 6 months later, I got caught with it by the police. And I was on probation for carrying a gun when I was 17 years old. While I was on probation, I had to take drug tests, and I failed them a lot. I had failed so many that it looked like I was going to go to prison. And then at the same time, I got caught drinking and driving when everything was kind of coming to a head. So I went to jail for a week and went in front of the judge, and the judge gave me an option of spending another year in jail or of going to a treatment center for 14 months. And that's how it happened. Over the next several months at the treatment program, I recognized that God was God. And when I let God be who God is, my life is transformed. My sins are forgiven. My guilt is taken away. My relationships with others are transformed. Those motivations inside me are transformed into the good. All of the good qualities that I had that I turned towards evil as a drug addict were turned into good, were reformed.
My uncle is probably truly my role model because despite all the mistakes he's made, that's what makes him him. And throughout that, he turned to God no matter how hard it got. And he was my sponsor for confirmation, and he's really the person I look to for my help with my faith and outside my faith.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. He's very, very inspiring. And it just goes to show you how it's never too late to experience God's mercy. Redemption happened once and for all.
This means that whatever sins we commit,
No matter how awful, hideous, or shameful,
we're forgiven and we're paid for on the cross.
this is difficult for us to get our heads around.
Think about the immense burden Christ bore on the cross, the sins of every person who walked the earth.
Yet, St. Paul reminds us where sin increased, grace overflowed all the more.
As awful as the effects of sins are, Christ's redemption compensates for it all.
Next, Carly's uncle Mike tells us how fear and pride can sometimes get in the way of seeking forgiveness and redemption.
Go, Uncle Mike.
Having serious problems with drug addiction and depression, that went on for many years. I didn't think that I had a problem. I didn't think that I needed any kind of redemption in my life until things continued to get worse. It was only when I was getting close to being 20 years old that I realized I had a real problem and I couldn't change it myself. The main thing that stands between me and just letting God be who God is my own pride and my own tendency to think that I don't need God's help, or I simply don't want God's help, or I'm not very happy right now, but I don't want to make it worse by admitting that I'm wrong. So that's played a really, really large role in my life. I needed to make some amends to feel redeemed. The first person that I had to be amended with was God. Making amends with other people, making amends with the church, especially in the sacrament of reconciliation, have been really important to me because I didn't realize how much my own drug use hurt other people until years afterwards. I think fear plays a huge role in keeping us in our sin and keeping us away from God, keeping us from asking for redemption. My own addiction had to do with just a deep inner loneliness and desire to be accepted by others. Later, when I was afraid that people would laugh at me after I got out of the mental hospital, I thought that it would be better for people to be afraid of me, when ultimately that was just my own fear that caused that.
In what ways have fear and pride gotten in the way of your own redemption?
When the sin starts happening, at first you're just shocked. Like Ricky said before, you're thinking, because of your pride, what am I doing? How am I doing this? And then when you try to stop, you start to feel the fear. I can't do this. I won't be able to stop. I don't know what to do. But you have to know that God is there to help you.
Like our fear gets in the way of us admitting that we're wrong. It's a lot easier to admit that someone else is wrong. Like, oh, no, you're wrong. But when it comes to yourself, it's like, and you don't know what to do.
Like, it's really hard for me to actually like say I'm wrong and like tell someone, because like I'm scared that like that person's gonna judge me. And I mean, no one wants to be wrong in their life. Like, no one wants to say, yeah, I messed up. You're scared that they're gonna tell someone else and it's just gonna go around, and then like you're gonna be trapped. Like, not only did you know you're wrong, but then everyone else knows you're wrong, and it's kind of hard.
I mean, as long as you're doing the right thing and redeeming yourself, I think that you're doing right in God's eyes.
Like, I think we just have to let what other people think go, and just just open ourselves up to God and be like ready for forgiveness.
You sort of build up a wall because you are afraid to let that down. You are afraid to say I'm wrong. That plays a big role in surrendering your gun, surrendering your front, and just giving yourself to God and redeeming yourself.
I feel like that's a challenge in itself, is like getting through that and knowing that God will accept you. As long as you tell him what's wrong, he'll always be there for you.
And also the best thing about reconciliation is that you're confessing your sins one-on-one to the priest, and the fact that he can't share that with anyone else, that really shows that it's only between you, and it'll stay there, and no one will know what was said. So.
It can sometimes be very difficult for young people to embrace Christ and all he has to offer, including forgiveness and redemption.
Next, the teens on the street tell us why they think many young people today don't embrace the idea,
and what Christ's redemption means to them.
Let's check it out.
I think what makes it difficult for teens to embrace Christ's forgiveness is that they're not really involved with Christ. They don't go to church every Sunday, and they don't, religion isn't, or faith isn't a part of their life.
Not a lot of people are exposed to enough religiousness, I guess.
I think it makes it harder because a lot of people don't really believe in faith anymore.
I'm more worried about TV and magazines, celebrities, and not really worried about religion. And I feel like everybody should start going to church and follow religion, believe in something.
The more stuff around us we get, the more we forget how important it is to believe in God, have a good relationship with him. There's so much distractions nowadays, it's hard to keep focused.
There is a lot of depression and kids beating themselves up now, and if they can look to God for forgiveness, then I definitely think he could help them out of a lot of tough situations.
Josh Hamilton, he was doing a lot of different drugs. He was had a lot of different problems. He was an alcoholic. He's doing well, making money, supporting his family. He's just changed his life around completely.
I believe that God sacrificed himself on the cross just because of love. He loved us so much that he was willing to die for us.
Well, he put himself on the cross for us to have a better world, and I thank him for that.
We can still ask for forgiveness and still have a chance at heaven.
Christ's redemption meant that he loved us so much that he was able to forgive us for all of the things we had done wrong, because we're only human, so we do things wrong. But he loved us so much that he was willing to forgive us and look past it if we were really sorry for what we had done.
Next, Carly's uncle Mike tells us all about the people who helped him find his way to God and how he gives back, now trying to help others struggling with addictions.
You know it, Justin. He also tells us the amazing things he accomplished in the last 12 years of his life, since he's been clean and sober and turned his life over to Christ.
To someone who's done something really, really horrible as you could possibly think, look to Jesus and look what he said on the cross when people nailed him to the cross and crucified him. He said, "Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And I think that God looks down on us and he sees fallen humanity that doesn't know what it's doing. His grace, his mercy is beyond any cruelty that we could think of, beyond any atrocity of history. God's bigger. It really took a lot of factors. It took drug addiction getting worse, the law, pressure from people who loved me, pressure from people at school. In the end, it took being locked in a jail cell, but then being given the chance to admit who God is. I decided to stay at the treatment center where I was and volunteer for several months. And then when I went to college, I went back to another treatment center that I went to when I was a teenager, and I worked there every Friday for several years. After that, I've been going to Teen Challenge, and that was the program that changed my life. I speak there, and I see a lot of myself in those people, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of struggle with not being able to forgive themselves, and hopefully I'm able to give a little bit of hope to some of those people. I've been drug and alcohol free completely for 12 years now. I've been volunteering at drug rehabs. I earned 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree. Now I'm working on a PhD. I got married. I speak 3 languages, and hopefully I will be graduating with my PhD in a year.
What I like a lot about Mike's story is that he had the analogy of God is the lifeboat for us, which really speaks volumes on how much God is there for us. And if we can really understand that, then we can really feel his true effect on redemption for us.
Yeah, I like how he talks about being set free within the jail cell, and Christ is what set him free. It took him to realize that. In a sense, it reminds me, even in situations in my life, when I'm in doubt, it feels like I'm imprisoned in a sense, and just that redeeming quality, just being set free from whatever troubles you brought onto yourself, and whatever you've done wrong, you're set free from that. I like that.
I like the fact that he actually gives back. Now that he's out of his whole ordeal, he still gives back to the community and back to the teens who are going through the same thing.
Mike traveled his road in his life, and it wasn't easy. You know, he came across obstacles. He fell off the horse, so to say, so many times, and that brought him down paths that weren't good for him. You know, he made those choices, but you know, God spoke to him, whether it be through people in the times that he was at his lowest, made him, you know, come back in a completely new life and continue on the right path. And I feel like God's inspiration for that is just so powerful. And, you know, it really speaks to anybody that's going through a hard time that God is there.
Through confession, we receive forgiveness for our sins.
The grace to fight sin in the future.
And we're reunited with God.
While redemption happens once and for all,
confession or reconciliation is available for us in our lives right now to be reunited with God whenever we fall into sin.
Next, my Uncle Mike tells us about other ways we can find redemption in our lives.
And he tells us how it doesn't stop with our own redemption. We need to make our part in God's ministry to reconcile him to the whole world.
For sure. Let's check it out.
Well, first and foremost, to seek redemption, we can just stop and pray. And if you don't know how to pray, you could go and sit in a church and just be silent and let God be who God is. You can also go to a priest. You can go to a friend who loves God and goes to church. You can open up the Bible, read the Psalms, reading the Gospels, and seeing who Jesus is. And seeing that everyone who came in contact with Jesus changed. And that Jesus didn't come to save the righteous, he came looking for the sinners. You can go to the sacrament of reconciliation, pray the rosary, just meditate on what Christ has done for all of us and where you fit into that place. And then ask God where you fit into the bigger scheme of things. Where are you going to go with this? And that's how we live out redemption. It's not just simply being forgiven so that we can get a prize. It's being forgiven so that we can actually take a place in this giant story of forgiveness and actually play an active role in God's ministry of reconciling the world to himself.
I feel like redemption is important to share with other people too. You know, we're given the gift of redemption, you know, God gives it to us for a reason, and I feel like we should practice that with other people, you know, be the better person.
Like if we've been given a second chance, give that second chance to other people, so they can share in what we have gotten a second chance for.
We could go out like in the street and argue with someone and we could forgive them, or we could keep the argument going. And we could either reject Jesus from our lives or we could accept him. So we have to realize that we need to make the right choices constantly. We have a lot of power in our hands, and we need to use that power wisely.
It's vital that we understand God's immense love for us.
That we understand and know in the depths of our heart that God longs to have a relationship with us.
And that we experience God's mercy, compassion, and forgiveness through the sacrament of reconciliation.
It's essential that we experience the ongoing mystery of Christ's redemption in our life.
Do you have a story of redemption?
We'd love to hear it.
Contact us at realfaithtv.com.
Or share your thoughts with us on Twitter.
Finally, we'll leave you today with this scene from the movie, The Passion.
When Christ is walking the road to Calvary, covered in sweat and blood, Mary is close behind him, and she keeps trying to get close to her son.
Finally, they meet, and you can only imagine the pain in Mary's heart, looking into the eyes of her son, so disfigured, in so much pain.
But he looks back at her and says, "See, I make all things new."
That's a snapshot of redemption. Jesus makes us new.
He washes us clean in his blood.
No sin, no matter how ugly, is outside his grace.
No stain, no matter how deeply embedded, cannot be washed clean.
And don't you ever forget it.
That's right. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on
Real Faith TV.
God bless.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.